LeetCode problem number 355, design Twitter. So this problem is pretty easy, to be honest. What it wants us to do is just to design a simplified version of Twitter, right? Where the users can post tweet, follow, unfollow, and is able to see the 10 most recent tweets in the user's newsfeed, right? So here are some functions we need to implement. We have the constructor function, and then we have the post tweet, right? Compose a new tweet with the user ID and the tweet ID, user ID. And each call will be made with a unique tweet ID. Okay, that's just some housekeeping. The get newsfeed, this is a bit important. We have to retrieve the 10 most recent tweet IDs, right? And it must be either from the users who the users followed or by the user themselves, right? And again, the tweets must be ordered from the most recent to the least recent. And then we have the follow and unfollow functions, which is pretty self-explanatory, right? Okay, let's get straight into it. So for the posts, I'm using a vector storing a pair of integers. One of the integers will be used for the user ID, the other is used for the tweet ID, right? So when a new post is created, when you post a tweet, what you do, you just post and then push back, right? That's it. For the followers, right, I call it followers, but it was more used for users. I'm using a map to store the users, right? This integer will be used for the user ID basically. And then I have a set here. This will contain all of the user this user has followed, right? It will be a set. Okay, so constructor, I didn't really use it. Post tweet, right? So how I do it is I post and then push back a pair, user ID and tweet ID. And then let's look at the follow and unfollow first. So they are both really identical, except one is using insert and one is using erase. So how I do it is in the followers map, I create a new pair with the key being the follower ID, the user ID basically, and then I insert the followee ID into that value, right? So the key and value, the key will be the user ID, the value will be the followee ID. Okay, for the unfollow, it's basically the same thing except I just use erase. Alright, let's get to the get newsfeed part. So here I initialize a vector called output. So this output will be what will be used to return when the function is called. So the way I do it is, since I'm using a vector and I'm pushing back the post, we have to get the most recent to least recent is basically looking at the post vector from the back, right? Which is why here I start with reverse begin, right? R begin, and I iterate until reverse end, Rn. Okay, so this is basically to check if I've reached the maximum capacity, which is 10. If I reach 10, I will just break out of this loop and return it. Otherwise, here I store the user, right? The followers, this is basically our database to store all the users, right? User ID. So here I have the user, and what I'm just doing is to find whether or not this post that I'm iterating at, right? This post I'm iterating at from the back is inside the follower list set, right? It's inside this set. If it is, then it won't be the end, and it will be actually something, because if you look here, the newsfeed must be posted by users who the user followed or by the user themselves, right? So this part is basically to check whether or not the post was from a user that the user followed, right? The followee that the follower has followed, basically. And this other part is basically to check whether or not the post was from the user himself. So if either one condition meets, I'll just push back the tweet ID, right? Push back the tweet ID into the output, because we need to order it from the most recent to the least recent. And then once that is done, the loop continues until we either hit 10 in our output size, or we have iterated through the entire post vector, which then we will just return the output, which contains the 10 posts, right? If there are 10 posts. Okay, pretty straightforward. That's all I have to share. Thanks.